We all used to have that one friend in elementary that used to sniff like pixie sticks and sniff of some of that powdered Lucas candy, right? No, neither did I, because I did not associate with psychopaths. That's absolute buffoonery. I consume candy the old-fashioned way, through my mouth, okay? I'm not snorting it up. I was a tiny little normie child, okay? But anyways, let's get serious here for a second. I actually wanted to talk about something that kind of popped up on my radar recently, and that has a lot to do with the fact that I've been checking eBay a lot, pretty consistently. I've been going through this kind of phase where I check on action figures that are sold out, and I check to see what they're reselling for on the secondary market, and usually eBay is a pretty good barometer for that. And today we're going to be talking about one particular collectible that it was actually open to order. Anybody could pick it up, and it was semi-affordable, at least in my personal opinion. We're talking about the X-Men 97 Sentinel Marvel Legends action figure. This was pretty big. It was a pretty hefty figure. If I'm not mistaken, it retailed for about like $180 plus shipping and taxes, and I think it was closer to about like $220 once everything was accounted for. Now, I believe you did have a month to pre-order this particular collectible, and then after that you would wait about like a year for this to actually go into production and then arrive at your front door. There were plenty of people that were interested in this. I don't remember what the limit was on these particular action figures. I don't think there was, but people were interested in this. There were a lot of people that not just wanted it for their X-Men 97 display, but just their X-Men display in general, because maybe they did not pick up the HasLab iteration of the Sentinel. And so the pre-order date came and went, and the people that wanted it picked it up, and those that did not or were on the fence completely missed out. I'll count myself in that because I don't have an X-Men 97 display, and so it just didn't make any sense for me to pick it up, even though I do feel like it's a phenomenal looking collectible. I'm happy for those people that were able to purchase it. They did have it on display at SDCC, and that thing displays absolutely insane. The range of motion, the range of articulation is absolutely crazy. I did not expect it to get into those type of dynamic poses, but the figure does look to be worth its money. The question here now is, who are these people trying to buy it through eBay? I was actually on there recently, and it's reselling for about like $300 to about $330, which honestly doesn't leave a lot of meat on the bone if you're doing the math at home. You have to account for the reshipping of these individuals. They probably purchased it for about like $220. Let's assume that they have to pay for shipping, which is about another $25 plus eBay fees. There's maybe like $40 to $50 to be made off of each of these individual collectibles. I'm not sure exactly who's going out of their way to make that much money off of a collectible, but kudos to you, I guess. What's funny is the amount of people that were upset when I called these people scalpers, because I did it the first time around with the Dragon Man collectible, where that completely sold out, and then there were people trying to resell it on eBay, and people clamored and were against the fact that I used the term scalper. Personally, I don't think that it's a subjective word. I think anybody that tries to buy something to resell it for a profit is technically a scalper. I kind of talked about something similar with the whole SDCC event, where there were a lot of people purchasing SDCC exclusive collectibles and then trying to resell them on eBay. But I made a mention of saying that I felt like it was a little bit different, just because those people were trying to compensate for the amount of money that they spent at the convention. So it really wasn't like a profit that they were necessarily quote unquote making. It was more of just them trying to offset the cost. So some of the money that they spent at the convention would be offset by, you know, the small little amount of profit that they made off of reselling some of these exclusive collectibles. So even though I still think it's reselling and I still think it's scalping, I can understand why people were doing it. But here, obviously, people bought an extra one just to flip it for a profit. We don't know exactly how much that profit is. I'm going to assume it's only a tiny little chunk compared to how much they're investing in the actual figure, but still, it's scalping nonetheless. What the most interesting part about this entire situation is that these action figures are not even in their hands yet. They're essentially trying to flip a pre-order, which I think is, I don't know, kind of hilarious. At least with the Dragon Man, they already have it in hand. they have the action figure or the box in their house ready to ship. Here you're essentially buying the idea of an action figure in the foreseeable future. I don't know if anybody's necessarily comfortable with that. eBay, I think, has like a time frame. If you don't ship something or if you don't actually send the item out to the consumer, then I think they can cancel it or you can get into some trouble. So I'm not sure exactly how that works. So definitely do your research before pre-ordering any of these through eBay, which honestly at this point is probably your only option unless you want to go to like a local toy store near you. What's really interesting, I wanted to actually take a really quick look at the HasLab Sentinel, which is essentially the other option that you have when it comes down to Sentinel action figures. I think there was like a Marvel Legends Gamerverse Sentinel 2-pack that was released not too long ago, but those are extremely small. Then there was the retro line, which had very minimal articulation and honestly was a little bit too small. Same thing. I think the HasLab Sentinel or the 97 Sentinel, they're really your only options if you want a display worthy Sentinel action figure. Now the HasLab one, that one has just garnered a ton of attention. I think it's going for well over twice the original price point, if I'm not mistaken. If you want to pick up the Sentinel, you're paying like low 800s to about mid 800s. And if you do plan on buying any of these through eBay, make sure you do your research because a lot of the sellers actually only sell like the Sentinel by itself without any of the stretch goals, or they're taking things away from the retail offering. Maybe they'll take like a head sculpt or some of the accessory pieces, things of that nature. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell anybody how to spend their money or what it is that you should be doing with your collectibles. I just think it's a little bit shady that people bought multiples. These aren't even in their hands yet and they're already trying to flip them. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that most people that have these on eBay probably are not collectors, or they never intended to keep the Sentinel. They're already looking to flip it and, you know, make or maximize their profits here. And yes, I know the argument for these type of choices, usually it's like, well, everybody was able to pre-order when they wanted to. This is just the price that they have to pay for coming in late. And honestly, guys, I think everybody has different situations. There may be a lot of new collectors that are just jumping on to the hobby. It could also be that certain people were going through a really rough patch in their life. Maybe they couldn't afford it at that particular moment in time, or maybe they were going through some pretty severe stuff and they just didn't pay attention to anything action figure slash collectible related during that time frame. And I don't know, it just feels wrong that there are so many people out there that buy action figures but don't really collect them, right? Like there's just a gigantic group of people out there that literally just buy things that they think will have a resale value that isn't just action figures. Like we consistently see this in like the shoe market, for example. We consistently see people buying multiple pairs or just buying a pair and then flipping it for profit the very next day because they're very limited shoes. Action figures fall into that same category. We see it a lot with comic books, especially if it's like a secret variant or if there is a ratio variant that's like a 1 in 10 or maybe a 1 in 50. They usually garner a little bit more of a price point, but they have a ton of resale value. Let me just say that if I were in their shoes, this would be like very fatiguing. Could you imagine jumping through all these hoops, receiving the action figure? You're already risking about like $200, well over $200. You're taking it home, you're inspecting it, making sure that nothing's wrong with it. You're taking pictures, relisting it, and then shipping it off to somebody else with the hopes that nothing happens to the package on the way to whoever bought it through one of these websites, all for just a measly tiny little sum. Like if you're investing about, let's say $250 for this collectible, that's including how much you paid for the collectible, taxes, the shipping that you had to pay, and then the shipping that you also have to cover when you send it out to the consumer, and then eBay fees, potentially an extra box or some extra packing material that you have to spend on. I think you'll easily be spending about like $250 to $260, maybe even higher than that. So your profit margins are extremely thin. I floated this around, but I think there is a very strong possibility that people were able to buy these action figures at wholesale prices, because I just don't think that there's a ton of meat on the bone here. Like there's no way people are jumping through this many hoops just to make a few bucks off of them. I can kind of understand if it's a Marvel Legends action figure where you're investing like $20 to $25 and it's reselling for like $50, I guess maybe. But in most cases, if you're selling through eBay, there are just way too many fees, way too many expenses, and the risk is just way too high I honestly don't understand how these people sleep at night. Not because it should be on their conscience and, they shouldn't be able to sleep, but just because of the amount of effort that it takes to take advantage of people that collect action figures or comic books or shoes. It just doesn't matter. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see how people operate nowadays. But as I said, this was just a quick little video. I just wanted to showcase what this particular figure was already going for, even though it hasn't even shipped out from Hasbro. I don't know exactly when the ship date is for this action figure, but I'm assuming they're still a few months away from actually being able to ship out to the first few customers. So just kind of interesting. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Did you guys pre-order this Sentinel? Do you plan on maybe flipping an extra one that you might have bought? How many did you pick up? I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Would you ever consider, if you did not pick it up originally, would you ever consider paying that $300 price point? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Make sure to enjoy the hobby, pose your action figures, play around with them, and make sure to stay tuned as well. I mean, we're uploading on a daily basis. I love putting content like this together for you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoy it just as much. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.